My son was mowed down and killed by John Camfield, an ex-cop who chose to drink your sorrows away, and then get behind the wheel.
No police officer ever would want to hurt an innocent person.
Fucking you, and you smacked me.
Bro, nobody smacked you, bro. Why I smack you?
You didn't?
Why I smack you?
You didn't?
Why
You didn't? You didn't hit my
Why I
arm?
smack you?
Tears in court during sentencing for the former police officer who shot and killed Corey.
This is Numan Raja, a police officer who has been found guilty on 2 charges: manslaughter due to culpable negligence and attempted first-degree murder with a firearm. The conviction stems from his involvement in the shooting death of Corey Jones, a 31-year-old musician and housing inspector. Jones had found himself stranded on the side of the road after his car broke down, waiting for assistance. Close friends and family of the beloved Corey Jones felt compelled to send heartfelt messages to him, expressing their deep frustration and anger over the recent instances of brutality within their community. This tragic incident garnered significant media attention, mainly because it was connected to a series of similar cases involving the deaths of Black individuals at the hands of law enforcement officers.
This should have never happened. My uncle should still be with us.
The prosecutors in the case provided evidence that outlined the events of August 18, 2015, around 3:15 a.m. During this time, Numan Raja, while on duty but dressed in plain clothes, encountered a vehicle he believed was abandoned on the roadside. Unbeknownst to Raja, Jones was lawfully in possession of a firearm that he had purchased. Approaching the car, he engaged in a brief conversation with its occupant, Mr. Corey Jones, who was in need of roadside assistance. As the situation unfolded, Raja asserted that Jones aimed the firearm at him. This sequence of events formed a critical part of the case, highlighting the conflicting narratives that played a role in the trial. However, the prosecution contradicts this claim, contending that Raja fired his own weapon as Jones was attempting to flee the scene. In a matter of seconds following their initial encounter, Mr. Raja discharged a total of 6 shots, 3 of which struck Mr. Jones, tragically resulting in his death. After a thorough consideration of the case, the court reached a decision and announced that Mr. Raja would be serving a 25-year prison term for each of the 2 charges brought against him. The court determined that these sentences would run concurrently, meaning that he would serve both prison terms simultaneously rather than consecutively. This sentencing structure aimed to ensure that Mr. Raja would spend a collective 25 years behind bars, taking into account both of the charges brought against him.
Count 1, I hereby sentence him to 25 years in the Department of Corrections. And on count 2, I hereby sentence Mr. Raja to 25 years in the Department of Corrections.
This is David Oliver, previously the police chief of Brimfield Township. The charges against him encompass illegal restraint, attempted theft, simple assault, and unauthorized use of property. Dave employed the same term, mope, to describe him during the sentencing process.
You become the mope that you wrote about in your book.
David Oliver's stance was one of firm resistance as he entered a plea of no contest in response to a range of charges leveled against him. At the heart of the case was Crystal Casterline, a fellow female officer, who came forward with accusations of misconduct, including the charges of sexual harassment. These charges encompassed acts such as attempted theft while holding office and allegations of sexual assault. Observations about some of the allegations, Oliver made the decision to enter a guilty plea for all the charges against him. Consequently, he was sentenced to a 2-year probation period and was obligated to provide reparations. Additionally, he faced a permanent ban from ever resuming his role as a police officer. This is Amber Geiger, a former police officer from Dallas. Today was a day she had been dreading, the day of the judgment. As the verdict was announced, her fears became reality, and it was even worse than she had imagined.
The jury unanimously finds the defendant, Amber Geiger, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment. No outburst.
Taking a deep breath, Geiger fought back tears, her emotions overwhelming her. A court officer stood by her side, gently running a comforting hand through her hair, trying to offer solace in this difficult moment. Meanwhile, Botham Jean's family felt a sense of relief wash over them as the judgment was pronounced. Throughout the trial, countless individuals had attended each day's proceedings, all wearing red, a tribute to Botham's cherished color. In a moment of pure joy, Jean's mother raised her arms in triumphant celebration, acknowledging the victory that had been achieved. Outside the courthouse, the air was filled with the voices of supporters, their cheers echoing in support of the guilty verdict that had been reached. Leaving the courtroom, Amber Geiger managed to maintain a composed facade, but the moment she was out of the camera's view, her emotions overwhelmed her, and tears streamed down her face. Nearby, her relatives sat in their seats, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief, struggling to come to terms with the verdict. As the trial's sentencing phase looms, the potential of a life behind bars hangs heavily over Geiger. The guilty conviction stands as a stark outcome, a result of her actions that led to the death of a 26-year-old accountant who was simply returning home from church. The tragic incident unfolded in an apartment that wasn't hers. She had mistakenly entered, believing it was her own. In a crucial piece of evidence, body camera footage revealed Geiger leading fellow officers to the apartment in the aftermath of the shooting. Throughout the footage, she can be heard reiterating her belief that she had been in her own apartment at the time of the incident, a statement that echoed throughout the trial. Throughout the trial proceedings, her testimony held the entire nation in captivation.
No police officer ever would want to hurt an innocent person.
Her legal representatives argued that it was an unfortunate mistake, a grave error on her part. However, there are doubts among some that the verdict will remain unchanged in the future.
This is probably a defective verdict, meaning defense counsel will ask the court to reduce the verdict from murder to aggravated manslaughter.
The judgment holds immense importance, as stated by a lawyer representing the Jean family. This case stands out as a rare instance where a police officer has been convicted in a racially charged situation. The implications of this verdict are substantial and far-reaching.
A huge victory, not only for the family of both of them, Jean, but as his mother Allison told me a moment ago, this is a victory for black people in America.
This is Matthew Davis, a former La Mesa police officer who is at the center of a highly debated arrest video. The question of whether he will be charged for fabricating a police report hangs in the balance. The preliminary examination of Matthew Davis has recently drawn to a close. Stemming from the incident that ignited days of protests, he now faces allegations of knowingly presenting a falsified police report. Once again, the arrest footage took the spotlight within the courtroom. A clear divide exists between the backers of the discharged officer, who remain convinced that the case lacks merit, and those advocating for Amari Johnson, who assert that the charges leveled against Davis fall short of addressing the issue at hand. In a courtroom scene, Matthew Davis, once a La Mesa police officer, appeared with a clean-shaven look and attired in a suit. With a composed demeanor, he listened attentively as Detective Julie Jensen took the stand. Her testimony shed light on the events surrounding Davis's encounter with Amari Johnson. According to Jensen, Davis's initial reason for approaching Johnson was his suspicion that he was smoking on the Grossmont streetcar platform. Jensen further asserted that the former officer stated Johnson had engaged in physical aggression.
Mr. Johnson swatted at his hand or pushed his hand.
Recordings from body cameras and onlookers provide a glimpse into a tense exchange that transpired in May 2020. The footage, both from the perspective of the officer and bystanders, captured a segment of the intense interaction that unfolded during that time. During the incident, Johnson offered an explanation, detailing that he was on the search for a friend who resided in a nearby apartment complex.
I'm talking to you and you smacked me.
Bro, nobody smacked you, bro. Why I smack you?
You didn't?
Why I smack you?
You didn't?
Why
You
I
didn't?
smack
You didn't hit my
Why I
arm?
smack you?
Initially, Johnson's encounter with law enforcement began when he was approached due to smoking in a public area. However, the situation escalated swiftly, and he was subsequently informed that he was being held for allegedly assaulting an officer. Eventually, all charges against him were dropped. In a turn of events, the focus shifted to Matthew Davis, the former La Mesa police officer. He now faced a serious charge as the district attorney pressed a felony count against him for submitting a fabricated police report. The allegations against Davis claimed that he had provided misleading information, asserting that Johnson was involved in smoking and evading fare payment at the trolley station. Within the courtroom, Local activists made their presence felt as they rallied in support of Johnson. Their appearance served as a visual demonstration of solidarity and backing for his cause.
This report is that he thought he was smoking. He didn't think he was smoking because he had no cigarettes, he had no lighter, he didn't even raise a lit object to his lips. This is a lie.
The encounter took place merely days following the tragic murder of George Floyd, an incident that triggered widespread anger and protest within the local community. The timing of this meeting amplified the existing outrage and added a layer of intensity to the situation. For those rallying behind the dismissed police officer, the lens through which they view the entire scenario is political.
Days after this George Floyd incident, it's very volatile. I mean, our society, they want to demonize police officers. It's time that we stand up and support our police officers.
Dagus later faces 3 years in prison.
The drugs were there. I did not put the narcotics there.
This is Zachary Wester, a former sheriff's deputy entangled in a web of serious allegations. Wester stands accused of a range of offenses, including racketeering, falsifying evidence, wrongful detention, and drug possession. At the heart of the case lies a disturbing accusation. Wester is believed to have planted narcotics in numerous vehicles during routine traffic stops. These incidents have raised significant concerns about the integrity of his actions while serving as a law enforcement officer.
Appears to be an illegal narcotic. Do you know anything about that? I do not.
In a perplexing turn of events, even though each of the drivers vehemently denied any awareness of the narcotics, the majority of them found themselves apprehended. Ultimately, these concerns led to the suspension of Zachary Wester in 2018. The arrests created a stir within the law enforcement agency itself, prompting internal worries and discussions. The situation took an extended course of action, reaching a climax when the matter was finally brought to trial 3 years later. During the trial, Wester stood firm, entering a plea of not guilty to all the allegations that had been put forth against him.
This is a case about an abuse of an incredible power, about the abuse of the incredible...
In a strategic move, the prosecution presented a powerful piece of evidence in court, the defendant's own body camera footage. This compelling visual material was employed to reinforce their argument and build a stronger case against the accused. Right after being released from jail, Stephen Van's situation took another unfortunate turn. It's reported that during this vulnerable moment, Zachary Wester came across methamphetamine in Van's car. This unexpected discovery added a new layer of complexity to Van's circumstances, potentially leading to further legal entanglements. Van's actions paralleled those of the other drivers who testified in the case. Similar to them, he granted the police permission to search his vehicle. His rationale for doing so was rooted in the belief that he had no reason to hide anything.
I knew my truck was clean. I knew it was.
Throughout the trial, the jury was given the opportunity to view a significant portion of the recorded traffic stops. However, a significant twist occurred as the proceedings continued. It was eventually disclosed that some of the recordings had mysteriously vanished and were no longer accessible. This visual evidence played a crucial role in helping them understand the nature of the encounters between the law enforcement officer and the drivers involved.
Why in the world would that have been deleted? I wish I knew that answer.
The case of Teresa Odom, though, took a noteworthy twist. The body camera footage emerged as a particularly influential piece of evidence for the prosecution's argument. Contrary to common expectations, it was this visual documentation that held the most weight in strengthening the prosecution's case against the accused.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
As Odom approached the car, Wester initiated the search, marking the beginning of a pivotal moment in the encounter. Notably, a detail of significance emerged. Wester held a small object in his left hand. This observation gained significance as he readied himself to put on a pair of gloves. According to the prosecutor's account, a significant allegation emerges regarding Wester's actions. It's claimed that he discreetly concealed a small bag containing methamphetamine in his hand. As the events continued to unfold, he then purportedly stated that he had found this very bag along with a spoon inside the vehicle.
It is yogurt, sir.
I know. Okay.
It's yogurt.
How about this, though?
That is not mine.
As the trial delves into the motivations behind the events, The prosecution puts forth a particular claim regarding the 28-year-old officer's drive and aspirations. They assert that Wester, fueled by ambition, was eager to swiftly progress to handling drug investigations.
I did not put the narcotics there.
After 5 days of intense hearings and the testimonies of numerous witnesses, the responsibility of reaching a verdict rested in the hands of the jury. The weight of the decision was significant, as the outcome could drastically impact the future of Zachary Wester. If proven guilty on all the charges, the potential consequences are dire. He could face a life sentence behind bars, forever altering the trajectory of his life. The tension in the courtroom reached its peak as the clerk proceeded to announce the verdicts for the extensive list of 67 counts. The corrupt cop then faced judgment on 19 charges brought against them and was declared guilty. The officer's legal journey culminated in convictions that encompassed various instances of misconduct, notably in the arrests of both Van and Teresa Odom. A staggering 11 out of the 12 drivers involved in the cases filed formal legal complaints against Zachary Wester, shedding light on the extent of the allegations against him. In a moment that held significant consequences, the final judgment was rendered in July 2021. Wester was sentenced to a term of 12.5 years in prison, signifying the gravity of the offenses he had been found guilty of committing. This verdict marked a significant step in the pursuit of justice and accountability for his actions.
My actions cannot go unpunished. As a result of my actions, I caused panic in the community, caused citizens of the African American community to be targeted and inconvenienced.
This is Noah Lennon, a former Warren police officer who issued an apology for his involvement in a false claim regarding a shooting incident. This incident took place back in January 2020, prompting a frantic search by fellow police officers to identify the supposed perpetrator. However, it was later revealed that the information provided was inaccurate. As a consequence of his actions, Noah Lennon will be serving a jail sentence.
Ashamed of my actions on that day.
Noah Lennon, previously a Warren police officer who now carries the label of a felon, had a significant moment in court. It was the first instance since his arrest that he directly spoke to the court, shedding light on the events that unfolded on January 13th of the preceding year.
Police officer who had sworn to uphold and follow the law, from someone who made police work his life and would never do anything that would jeopardize not only his image, but the image of all officers everywhere, to someone who was so broken that I made a series of bad decisions.
According to the prosecutors, on that particular day, it's alleged that Lennon experienced a mental breakdown. He used his police-issued radio to report a distressing incident where he claimed he was targeted by a black man in a dark-colored SUV who supposedly fired at him. This distress call triggered a massive response, with around 60 police officers rushing to his aid and conducting traffic stops. The situation escalated to the extent that officers encircled an entire apartment complex, hoping to locate the alleged perpetrator. However, upon thorough investigation, it was revealed that Lennon's account of the events was fabricated. The incident that had set off such a significant police operation turned out to be false.
The black man in a hoodie is a very suspect statement made in today's society right now, and the court can't overlook.
Lennon stated that he had sought professional medical assistance and received a diagnosis for a serious condition, although he didn't provide further details about the nature of that condition.
I hope that all those affected can forgive me, as I am truly sorry for what I did and what problems it caused.
The damage that Mr. Lennon did to the Warren City Police Department and the African American community in Warren City, there's nothing that he can do to make up for that.
Lennon's sentence was determined to be 9 months of confinement in the Lorain Correctional Institution. This penalty was imposed due to his failure to fulfill the obligation of paying over $10,000 in reparations to the police officers who had responded to the incident that night. This is Michael Dotro, a former police officer from Edison, who engaged in a string of retaliatory plots against fellow officers whom he believed had mistreated him during his tenure on the force. This vengeful series of actions led him to commit a grave act, maliciously setting fire to his supervisor's residence. As he stood before the court for his arraignment, Dautreau was confronted with a multitude of charges. These included counts of attempted murder, aggravated arson, official misconduct, conspiracy to interfere with a witness, and conspiracy to retaliate. The charges of attempted murder and arson stem from an event that occurred on May 23, 2013. During this incident, Dautreau employed 2 containers filled with gasoline to deliberately ignite a fire at his supervisor's home. The supervisor, along with his wife, their 2 children, and even his 92-year-old mother, were all inside the residence when the fire was set. While the property sustained significant damage, thankfully no injuries were incurred by any of the occupants. Throughout the trial, which lasted approximately an hour, Dautreau remained entirely silent. The judge shared their perspectives on the matter while Dautreau chose not to speak.
Because of what this individual has done, because of him and people like him.
In recent years, Michael Dautreau's life has been marred by a series of legal troubles, in addition to the attempted murder and arson accusations. One instance involved him facing charges of official misconduct. It was alleged that he accessed police records and shared information with his wife about a tire-slashing incident that supposedly involved a woman he had a relationship with. Dautreau's legal woes continued as he pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges. This stemmed from his desire for retaliation against a North Brunswick police officer who had issued a drunk driving citation to someone else. These incidents together underscore Dautreau's tendency to eschew divine justice and instead take matters into his own hands to seek retribution.
But what he's really done, and what we're going to be left with after he's walking out the door to spend the next third of his life in prison.
Dautreau received his sentencing, with the court ordering him to serve 20 years in prison for the charge of attempted murder. In addition, he was given a 10-year prison term for the offense of aggravated arson and another 10 years for official misconduct. The legal consequences continued to pile up as he was handed down a 5-year prison sentence for his involvement in a conspiracy to interfere with a witness. Furthermore, he faced an 18-month prison term for his role in a conspiracy to retaliate. Crucially, it's important to note that all these prison terms will be carried out concurrently. This means that he will serve the longest sentence first, which is the 20-year term for attempted murder, and subsequently, the other penalties will be served in succession.
County teenager killed getting off of his school bus. She's now demanding justice for the ex-cop who hit her son, and today a judge sentenced John Canfield to 35 years in prison.
Meet John Canfield, the individual responsible for a tragic incident where he struck 5 children as they were walking to their bus stop. In the midst of this heartbreaking situation, the family of one of the young victims, Jaheim Robertson, stepped forward to deliver an emotional plea. Overwhelmed with grief, Jaheim's parents were visibly upset in the courtroom, finally breaking their silence as they shared their feelings.
Don't know the pain that you have caused our family. My son was mowed down and killed by John Canfield, an ex-cop who chose to drink your sorrows away and then get behind the wheel.
According to investigators, it's believed that John Canfield had a blood alcohol level that was double the legal limit at the time he hit 5 children from Dundee Ridge Middle Academy who were walking near their bus stop. This suggests that he was driving under the influence of alcohol when the unfortunate incident occurred.
Started screaming, saying, "Daddy, help me, Daddy, help me."
An off-duty deputy from the Polk County Sheriff's Office, along with his father, took it upon themselves to chase after the suspect. Jonathan Quintana, one of the individuals involved, recollects the moment when Canfield slipped. In light of the tragic incident involving a group of schoolchildren being struck down, the emotions and sentiments shared by those involved are truly poignant.
He advised your daughter.
Canfield maintains that he experienced a medical crisis during the incident, attributing his blackout to a liver issue. He believes that his health condition played a role in the events that unfolded.
The events that occurred on April 27th, I had not been drinking at all that day.
The judge made the decision to permanently revoke Canfield's driver's license as a consequence of his actions. Additionally, there is a possibility that he could be sentenced to spend the remainder of his life behind bars.
Him back, what all I'm asking is for justice for him.
This is Charlie Reeder at his sentencing hearing. The former Pike County Sheriff has admitted guilt to 2 charges: stealing while in office and tampering with evidence. The accusations against him revolve around allegations of unlawfully appropriating $5,000 in cash that had been retrieved from previous cases. In the current moment, he stands before Judge Patricia Cosgrove, who will decide the duration of his sentence for these offenses. Clearly displaying emotions, Reeder pleads for leniency from the judge. In his heartfelt plea, he requests the minimum possible punishment and suggests the opportunity for community service as a form of restitution. His words reveal a deep desire to make amends for his actions, and he awaits the judge's decision with a sense of remorse and hope for a second chance.
I stand here before you today to take accountability for my actions. As the Sheriff of Ohio, I shed, I shed bad light on the office of sheriff. For this, I am terribly sorry.
Following his genuine expression of remorse for the offenses he committed, Reeder earnestly implores the court to take into account the potential repercussions that a jail sentence could have on his family. He emphasizes the far-reaching effects that his actions and subsequent punishment could have on his loved ones.
So that I have the opportunity to watch my son graduate from high school. My daughter is getting married in October. So that I can be there for her.
As the defendant concludes his address, the judge has just one question left to ask. In his statement, Reeder discloses that a substantial portion of the money he obtained was directed towards funding charitable initiatives within the town. However, it's also come to light that he had amassed a substantial gambling debt. Despite his explanation, it appears that the court remains unmoved by his answers and the circumstances he outlines. The judgment is delivered, and Reeder is handed a sentence of 6.5 years. However, due to the concurrent nature of certain offenses, he will spend 3 years behind bars, with these sentences being served consecutively. Alongside the prison time, he faces additional consequences. He is prohibited from pursuing public office within Ohio, and is also restricted from engaging in work as a peace officer. These rulings highlight the weight of the court's decision and the impact it will have on Reeder's future. This is John Romer, a former police officer from Fort Worth. He recently received a significant 5-year prison sentence due to his involvement in perjury. Back in 2019, Romer was declared guilty for deliberately misleading the grand jury. His dishonesty revolved around an incident from 2016 when he engaged in an altercation with an individual within a hospital lobby. This unexpected turn of events has transformed a once dedicated law enforcement officer into an inmate. John Romer, who took an oath to uphold and enforce the law, now finds himself on the opposite side of it, serving time behind bars. The culmination of the trial brought a sense of closure. The case against John Romer reached its conclusion, leading to the decision to sentence him. The verdict underlines the seriousness of his actions and the consequences he must now face.
It is therefore the order, judgment, and decree of this court that the defendant, John Preston Romer, Jr., is hereby sentenced to 5 years confinement in the Institutional Division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
After more than 4 years had passed since a recorded incident in a hospital lobby, former police officer John Romer found himself in handcuffs, confined to a jail cell. The encounter had been captured by security cameras, serving as evidence of his actions. In 2019, Romer faced a significant consequence for his actions. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The reason behind this sentence was his conviction for providing false information while under oath, specifically regarding the events of that particular day.
Been a more severe, aggravated perjury, all the lies that he told to cover up his excessive.
While off duty, Officer Romer committed a physical assault on a 20-year-old named Henry Newson, forcefully body slamming him. The incident came under scrutiny by prosecutors, who carefully reviewed the case. This evaluation occurred on Friday, just before the court proceeded to pronounce Romer's sentence for the charge of perjury. The events leading up to the assault involved Newson borrowing a bystander's cell phone with the intention of arranging a ride. A disagreement between Newson and Romer escalated, resulting in Newson's arrest. During the subsequent proceedings, Romer testified before a grand jury, stating that he had apprehended Newson before resorting to physical force. However, a recorded dialogue captured by surveillance contradicted this claim, revealing that Romer had indeed struck Newson before making the arrest.
Romer told him, if I let you go after having to throw you on the ground and hit you, then I'm in trouble. He didn't have to throw him on the ground and hit him. But he committed to a lie on that day, and we're here 4.5 years later, still dealing with it.
The charges of trespassing and resisting arrest that had been filed against Newson were eventually dropped. On the other hand, Romer's attorney advocated for probation as his sentence and dismissed the perjury accusation, asserting that it was unfounded and incorrect.
It has no bones, it has a case that has no substance, it's a case that has no materiality. The statement, you're under arrest, is not material to anything that was litigated in this courtroom. It's a complete jellyfish of a case.
You know, as a police officer, we fairly expect as citizens for you to be a...
In this particular case, the judge arrived at the decision that a 5-year prison sentence is appropriate.
Do you understand these rights, Mr. Romer? Sheriff, he's your prisoner.
Romer had the potential of being sentenced to a maximum of 10 years in prison.